We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph and Masechet Shekalim. This is Shekalim Daf 21a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara asked a kasha within Rabbi Shimon's opinion. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Shimon says that let's say the Kohen Gadol dies and no one replaces him. So the Mishnah seems to say that May Ikar Hadin, the funds to bring the Minchas Kohen Gadol, should come from the Yarshim. There was a takana that it comes from the public funds from the Tzibor, but May Ikar Hadin, it comes from the Yarshim. And the Brisa seems to say, no, May Ikar Hadin, from the Torah, it comes from the public funds. So now Rabbi Chia Barba says, V'lo Yosu Maksha, isn't this a good question? It does seem to be, indeed, a contradiction within Rabbi Shimon. So the Gemara answers, also Rabbi Yaakov Baracha, Rabbi Avo, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yaakov Baracha says, in the name of Rabbi Avo, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Dvar Torah hu shetehei ba min hatzibur. Really, midoraisa, it should come from the public funds in such a situation. However, kevan dechazi to come midcha kalishka. However, it was seen that the lishka became pressed for money, meaning there was a situation where hundreds of years the Kohen Gadol would not even last 1 year. So they were constantly replacing the Kohen Gadol, and they had to use these public funds over and over again. So therefore, Yisi Omer Yigvu La Min HaYarshin. So they said, let's do it instead from the Yarshim, because we can't keep taking from the public funds. However, the Gemara says, Kevin the Chazi the Pashiba, but then it came out that the Yarshim were negligent. They weren't bringing the carbon at all. So therefore, they then made the takana, Hiskinu Sheteba Mitrumas Halishka. They made a takana, it should come from the Trumas Halishka. So again, really, May Ikar Hadin, originally it was from the Tzibor, then it went to the Yarshim, and then there was a takana again to go back to the Tzibor. And for this next section of the Gemara, all the way until the two dots, we're going to go here with the gears of the Gra. The Gra over here says at the side, Mikana ad hapsak Rabbi Shimon bar Nachman v'chulu mevulvelis ma'od v'girsa hagaon zal milubenes u'mechuveres. From here until the two dots, the girsa is very confused, and the girsa of the Gaon is clear, and here's the girsa as follows. V'achi garsinan Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan boy. Rabbi Asi Amar Rabbi Yochanan asked the following question. Ma shlema b'shacharis u'shlema ben ha'arboyim. It said again in the Mishnah that if the Kohen Gadol dies and you have no replacement, so instead of bringing a chatzi isaron in the morning for the mincha of the Kohen Gadol and a chatzi isaron in the evening, instead you have to bring a full isaron. So the question he's asking is as follows: do you bring the full isaron at shacharis and the full isaron ben ha'arboyim, meaning in the evening, o shlema shacharis uvadla ben ha'arboyim? Or maybe the karban mincha in the morning, that one you bring full, but you don't bring one in the evening at all. You don't bring one in the afternoon at all. So the Gemara says, Hadar Pshita lei. After he asked the question, he said it's obvious what the answer is. Shlema b'shacharis, shlema ben ha'arboyim. You bring it full in the morning, you bring it full in the evening. But the Gemara says, V'dot tzricha lei. The following, he had the following question. Shloshes lugin mahu. When it says there's shloshes lugin, again, that's the amount of oil that you put into this karban mincha of the Kohen Gadol. It's 3 lug. Shloshes lugin b'shacharis or shloshes lugin ben ha'arboyim. Is it 3 lug b'shacharis and 3 lug ben ha'arboyim? Again, this is a question when the Kohen Gadol dies, there's no one replacing. So they're asking, do you double the amount of oil in each one of the karban minchas, just like you double the mincha in general, just like you bring a full isaron? O lugu mechsa shacharis, v'lugu mechsa ben ha'arboyim. Or no, maybe you don't do that. Maybe you do a lug and a half. You keep that the same. You do a lug and a half in the morning, and you do a lug and a half ben ha'arboyim. Reb Chizkiya says, Af hadat tzricha lei. The following is also a question, a similar question. Kometz b'shacharis v'kometz ben ha'arboyim. Is it a full kometz in the morning and a full kometz ben ha'arboyim? O chatzi kometz b'shacharis v'chatzi kometz ben ha'arboyim. Or is it a half a kometz in the morning, half a kometz ben ha'arboyim? Again, the same question. Do you double the levona, or do you keep the levona the same? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yossi says, Klum lamdu lekometz lo milechem apanim. The whole limud of the kometz, where do we learn that you bring a kometz? You learn from the lechem apanim. Ma'alahalan shnei kamatzim b'chaser, afkan shnei kamatzim b'chaser. Just like over there, it's 2 kamatzim, so too over here, it's 2 kamatzim, it's going to be 2 kometz. Amar Reb Chizkiya says, Uklum lamdu legimel lugin lo mitamid. Also, when it comes to the 3 lug that you put into the mincha the Kohen Gadol, don't we learn that out from the karban tamid? Ma'alahalan shloshes lugin, afkan gimel lugin, kein sarach lomar. Just like there it's 3 lug, so to over here it's 3 lug. In other words, what the Gemara means to say is, you don't split that in half, you have that full as well. You do double the amount, just like you do double the amount of the karban mincha itself, so too you do the kometz, you do a full kometz, or you do a full kometz in the morning, full kometz ben ha'arboyim, not a chatzi kometz. And the same thing when it comes to the oil, you do 3 lugin in the morning and 3 lugin ben ha'arboyim. And then he just finishes v'tevas ma'atamon srichole afkan srichole shelo yeh v'chulu nimchagu. Erase those lines in the Gemara. And just one more note in terms of the word bechaser, which doesn't seem to fit in very well. The Gemara seems to just be saying it's two komets. One kometz in the morning, one kometz ben arbaim. What's this word bechaser? The Tiklin Chadatin addresses that. He says malahalan beis kamatzim afkan beis kamatzim v'tevas bechaser les benusach Yerushalmi. They don't have the word bechaser in the Yerushalmi. Vigar sinon law, but if you do have that gersa tzarach lamer dachi kamer, here's what it might mean. Behapachos eno pachos mi beis kumtzin. It simply means it can't be less than two komets. Develechem hapanim chaser levonta pasul. If you have lechem hapanim without levona, it's pasul. That means chaser means to say can't be less than that. You have to have at least that amount. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah shelo yeh v'chulu. It said in the Mishnah that one of the other takanos was that when it comes to the afer of the para aduma, the ashes of the para aduma, there's no me'ilah. If a person uses it for personal use, he doesn't have to bring a carbon me'ilah. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shimon bar Nachman b'shem Rabbi Yonasan. Rabbi Shimon bar Nachman says in the name of Rabbi Yonasan, "Bedin ha'yeh sheyimalu ba." Really, midoraisa there is me'ilah. V'hein gazru shelo yimalu ba. And it was a takana that there's no me'ilah. So the Gemara says, is that really the case? V'atani, but it was taught. Chatos, the word chatos, when it says the word chatos, when it talks about paraduma, melamed shemoalin ba. So that shows that there is me'ilah by the para itself. Ba moalin ve'in moalin ba'afra. And the Brisa says you can do me'ilah by the paraduma itself, but not by the afer of the paraduma. So it seems to be me'ikra adin. It seems to be midoraisa, there's no me'ilah. So what do you mean there's a gezerah, there's no me'ilah? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbi Avo answers, Barishona hayu mishtakshkin ba. Originally, they were actually mezalzel in the afer of the paraduma. V'nos nosa, gavi makosein, they would use it for their wounds, they would rub it over there. And so they said, since midoraisa, there's no me'ilah, we're going to use it. And they were mezalzel in it. The gazru sheyim aluba. Therefore, they made a gezerah that it's me'ilah. So they originally, the first gezerah was there is me'ilah to stop people from being mezalzel. Kevon shenigdru, but then they fixed the situation. People stopped being mezalzel. So gazru shelo yim aluba, they made a gezerah back to the original that there's no me'ilah by the afer of the paradum. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah of Yalakinan v'chulu. Mishnah said, let's say the kinim that are brought are pasul. So then there was a machlokas in the Mishnah. Do you use the public funds to bring substitute kinim on behalf of those who are obligated to bring these bird karbanos, or do you use the funds? You don't use the public funds. Instead, it's the person who supplies the Beis HaMikdash with the birds. That person should supply the substitute birds. So the Gemara now has, we're going to go again with the gears of the gra here. There's a little bit missing. Chaser kan tamon taninon mechsa lemechsa yiplu legos leola. This was talking about a similar case. In this case, we weren't talking about a situation where the kinim were pasul. This was the earlier Mishnah, which said, let's say you have the money that falls between the two boxes. You don't know if it goes to the kinei chova or to the ones that are the carbanola, the goes leola. So if it's exactly in the middle, you bring the carbanola. So now the Gemara asks, going back up in the Gemara, ha'isha hazos ba'mehi miskaperes. So this woman, if we're going to take this money that's halfway between the two boxes and use it for the carbanola that are not the obligations. So what happens if that money really was for the carbon that was a chova? So how is this woman who gave that money, how is she going to get her kapara? Because we ended up using that money for nidava, for the carbanola. So by mehi miskaperes, how is she going to get a kapara? So the Gemara answers a similar answer to what we said in our Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Tanai Bezdin. Once again, there's a condition of Bezdin. Hamisapek es hakinin, the person who's supplying the kinin, who misapek es hapsulos viesa ovdos. That person also supplies for any that are puzzle. That was the case in our Mishnah that they're puzzle. Or ovdos, those that are lost, similar to our case over here, where the money ends up lost between the two boxes. So again, the person supplying it needs to supply the substitute karbonos. Hadron alach perek mos shenimtzu. This is the conclusion of the 7th perek of Mesechet Shekalim. If you're enjoying this channel and these videos, please like, share, and subscribe, and please take a look at the description box below to see how you can support this channel. We will now begin the 8th perek of Mesechet Shekalim. And the perek begins with the Mishnah, Kol harokin hanimtsoin b'Yerushalayim tahorin. All the spit that one finds in Yerushalayim is tahor. Now the halacha is like this: if you have the rok, if you have the spit of a zav or a nida, those are generally tameh, and they have a gezerah that if you find any rok anywhere, you have to assume maybe it came from a zav or a nida and it's tameh. And the Mishnah here is saying that in Yerushalayim, the assumption is that it is tahor. Chutz mishel shuk ha'elyon divrei Rabbi Meir, except if it's found in the upper marketplace. So in those situations, the Gemara will explain this, but in those situations, we do make the gezerah, and we do assume that it is going to be tameh. Rabbi Yossi says, B'shar kol yemos hashana, so it goes as follows. If it's during regular times of the year, it's not the holiday, So then, shebe'emtza tamein. Any roke that's found in the middle of the street is tameh, because the majority of people are tameh during other times of the year. They're not trying to be pure, and the majority walk in the middle of the street, and therefore it is tameh. Shebitzdadin tahorin, but on the sides of the street, that's where the tar people walk to stay away from those who are tameh, so that you can assume is tar. Uveshas regel. Now during the holiday, it's exactly the reverse according to Rabbi Yossi. Shebe'emtza tahorin. Then most people are tahor, so the middle of the street is tahor. Shebitzadin tamein, and then at the sides it's tamei. Mipnei shehamiyutin mistalkin litzdadin. Because as we said, the minority of people generally walk along the sides of the roads to keep away from the majority, and so that's why that is the halacha. That's why it changes between b'shar yimos hashana and b'shas regel. And the Mishnah continues, Kol ha-kelim hanimtsoin b'Yerushalayim. All kelim, all vessels that are found in Yerushalayim, derech yerida lebeis hatvila tamein. If it's on the way down towards the mikvah, so then it's tamei. It means it hasn't yet been brought to the beis hatvila. V'derech aliyah, but if it's on the way up, meaning away from the mikvah, meaning it probably is already coming from the mikvah, so then tahorin, then you can assume it's tar. You can assume it was immersed properly in the beis hatvila. And as the Mishnah says, Shalok Yiridasan Aliyasan, it wasn't the same way that they took downward that the way they took upward. In other words, there were different routes. The Tamei Kelim all came in through one way, and then they went out, Tar, the other way. Divrei Rabbi Meir, this is all the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi says, Kulan Tahorin, all Kelim are considered Tahor, Chutz min hasal v'hamagrefa v'hamaritza, except for the basket and the magrefa and the maritza, hamiyuchadin lekvaras. All of these are vessels that are used specifically for burial purposes, something to do with bones, etc., and therefore those are assumed to be tameh, but according to Rabbi Yossi, everything else is considered tahor. And the Mishnah continues, Sakin shenimtzes biyodalid. Let's say you find a knife and it's the 14th of Nisan, so you can assume the owner made sure it was pure. Shochet ba miyad, you can use it immediately to do shchita of the Karban Pesach. B'shlosha also, but if you find such a sakin on the 13th, shono matvil, then you have to go and immerse it again. It might be tameh. Now, kofitz, if you find the kofitz was used to break the bones of the animal. So for that, bazeh uvazeh shonu matvil. Even already on the 14th, you have to be matvil again. Now, the reason for this is because the kofitz really has no use for kachim, because you're not allowed to break the bones of a Karban Pesach. So we have to assume that it's not necessarily tar, because it wasn't prepared for that. Now, there is a possibility that someone will bring a Karban Chagiga on the 14th, but that only happens in a situation where there's so many people that you need more food. So then you bring the additional Karban Chagiga. You don't always have to bring the Karban Chagiga. So there already it's a suffix whether or not the kofitz is going to be used for kachim, so you can't rely on that to assume that it's tar. It could very well be that the kofitz is tameh. Cholar ba'as or lios b'Shabbos. Now the Mishnah continues. Let's say the 14th of Nisan falls out on Shabbos. So in this case, on the next day, there's for sure, on Tesvav, on Yontiv, there's for sure going to be a Karban Chagiga, and you'll for sure have occasion to use the kofitz. And now it's Shabbos already. You can't immerse things on Shabbos. You have to assume it was taken care of before Shabbos. So now you can assume even the kofitz is tar. So shochid ba miyad, you're allowed to shecht with it immediately. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis.